in the next 10 years, the next decade, cancer will become the number one killer of all Americans. I hope we don't get there, but we're heading that way very, very quickly. We're also seeing a lot more of the metabolic syndrome, the insulin resistance scores going up. That is absolutely a pandemic right now. A lot of autoimmunity, a lot of Alzheimer's dementia are coming about now, more of that stuff than I've ever seen before. So those are stuff that I see more and more and more, and I wish I did.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited today to have a longevity expert and a longtime biohacker, physician Mark Sherwood. Mark has written some of Amazon best-selling books on longevity and health with his wife, who's also an osteopathic doctor. And they've also he's had a really interesting background. I'm not going to tell you about it. I'm going to let him start out by telling it, because I always love folks who come into healthcare, medicine, and helping other people improve their wellness from outside that arena, because it gives a fresh perspective. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Brad, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this, so I'm glad to be here with you.
Awesome. So I'm going to start I want you to take us back and tell us how you got into wellness.
Well, my story is unique, to say the least. I started off, obviously, years ago as a professional baseball player. Didn't achieve my dream of making the major leagues, but I did play professionally over in the country of Australia, which was kind of cool. When my career ended, I decided I needed to get a real job, so to speak. So I joined the police department in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Shortly thereafter, I was able to join the SWAT team. And so that was quite an experience during my time there. And during my time there, I was also able to travel around the world with the world famous Power Team. It was a feats of strength demonstration to share a gospel message. So I've been all over the world with that. But during the end of my career, Brad, I was tasked with developing a wellness program. I was transferred to the police academy. And there was an endeavor that nobody had ever done before. So I didn't know really what I was doing or how to do it or where to start. So I started doing my research. And I found an old FBI study that showed that the average life expectancy for the 20-year male retired police officer was 66 years of age. And man, it literally broke my heart, because I watched these men and women serve, and then I watched them die. And I saw it enough, in my own life, people retire and die, and I wanted to figure out why. And I thought, well, surely it's changed, surely somebody did something about that. But to my chagrin and sadness, I checked the stats for the state of Oklahoma and the county of Tulsa, in that same time frame. And it was the same, and actually 1 year less, respectively. And so that was sort of the wake-up call that I went on a mission to figure it out. And I wanted to find out why. Why are people dying so early? Why are they not fulfilling this dream of being able to retire and live the good life and all those things that we all strive to do? And so I never stopped studying, I suppose. Much like Forrest Gump kept on running, I kept on studying, and decided actually to go back to naturopathic school. My wife's an osteopath, by the way. I'm a naturopath. And my buddies thought I was crazy, I suppose, but I realized my mission to protect and serve was really not changed. It was the same. It just had to expand. And I really felt called to do that. And so that started my journey into the wellness space. And ever since then, my wife and I have been really blessed and really fortunate to do a lot, see a lot, learn a lot, and have the opportunity to learn more and help people experience a better, hopefully better, increased health span.
Well, and as I think about, and by the way, that's an amazing story, and I love it, someone coming from the outside in. And I think probably the one thing that sticks out to me is obviously being on the SWAT team or anywhere in the police department. That's a pretty stressful job. You never know when life or death is knocking at your door, either yours or seeing someone else's. And so it's a very stressful role. And I imagine that stress is part of that premature aging. And I think it's probably an amplification of what we experience in modern society, where we have so much flying at us. So you were probably at the tip of the spear, if you were.
I would agree with that, because I realized that, a lot of people don't know the police officers are trained, and rightly so, that they can die at every traffic stop, every call. So you have this sort of a hyper awareness, a hyper cortisolism, if you will. And it's supposed to keep you alive. I mean, that's what cortisol does. It's supposed to keep you alive in the time of stress. So again, this is a normal bodily function, normal hormone response. And yet, when it's happening all the time, it takes its toll on you over time because no one is meant to be living with a bear chasing you or a lion chasing you trying to eat you. I'm using that as a metaphor, but people get the
Yep.
idea. And that's exactly what happens to police officers. As a matter of fact, it took me probably 5 years to build a post-retirement to be able to go to a restaurant and actually sit with my back to the door. And that's not
I
kidding.
still
It's
can't do
it's
that.
difficult because you had this hyper awareness. But then about the same time I stated a moment ago that I began to feel called to expand that horizon in protection service. I realized that the world was transitioning that way with social media. That was the birth of that time, the internet, World Wide Web, and then you had Twitter, now X, then you had Facebook. It was MySpace, I think, or something like that at one point. But all that was happening, and people were more hyper alert and hyper vigilant. So I sort of saw that coming and saw that the overstressed lifestyle was going to um, decay our life in a sense. It was going to destroy our sleep, our ability to interconnect, our ability to communicate and converse, relax, if you will. And I saw stress as creating behaviors that were not really desirable, with eating things like that, that we shouldn't do, et cetera. So, yeah, all that kind of came to a crux about that time. And I guess I just kind of foresaw it coming.
And so you got into this and you started this in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which isn't exactly the tip of the spear as far as alternate health. So
Yeah.
I imagine that was a kind of a little bit of a challenging on ramp for you.
To say the least. The obesity crisis, unhealthy crisis has really grown since the early 1980s with the birth of the food pyramid and all that stuff going forward, and we have yet to turn that around. We haven't. It's the worst. We're in the worst position right now with health we've ever been in the history of the mankind's existence. And America, sad to say this, but I believe it has learned to profit off of that
Yeah.
and learned to export that to other countries. So the westernization of the world is becoming the most deadly thing ever. And I think the standard American Western diet has killed more people than every war combined. And I think it will continue to do that. With that said, you're right. Where I live in the state of Oklahoma, and even in the South, you're seeing states approach 50 to 60% obesity crisis.
Wow.
And that was, that's now. But even then, it was terrible when we started. And, I suppose plenty of customers is what people would think. But on the flip side, Brad, I think people don't think about this is that when we're out here, my wife and I, preaching a language that is foreign
Yeah.
or counterculture or in the minority, yes, it's right, but it's not the popular thing. And it's not the easy road, it's the narrow road. And I think when that happens, it puts you in a spotlight in a negative way that you don't really expect. So we were put on the spotlight of a negative side, kind of the OG biohackers, if you will, the OG functional medicine people. Before those terms were even out there, we were doing this, and people were criticizing us. I mean, my wife, as a matter of fact, got kicked out of mainstream medicine because too many people got too well. They weren't coming back for unnecessary procedures, and that should tell people that are listening right now all they need to know about how things changed, and everything went that direction, and so the world keeps getting more unhealthy. But thankfully now, according, what I've seen, and even to be on the great podcast with you right now, people's voices are getting louder with the idea of wellness, longevity, and the whole space of functional medicine for whatever that is worth at a decibel level that I haven't seen before. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Absolutely. And on that topic, you just put out your new book, Authentic Longevity. It's a great book. So I want you to tell us a little bit about the book and start with telling us what was the impetus for writing the book.
We've written several books, as you know, but we really decided to, at this stage of our life, pour our heart and soul, our entirety of what we think we know, into a book, a handbook of longevity. And even the subtitle on that book is fascinating. We decided on it, Unlocking Vitality the Sherwood Way. what does that mean? It's like we've got experience that people maybe don't have.
Yep.
It's through pain and suffering and getting knocked down, as I talked about, getting criticized and standing firm, learning a lot, from getting knocked down, and learning a lot from mistakes we've made, obviously. And so we put everything in that book to give people a handbook on every part and facet of the idea of longevity, so they could begin to have some place to go for what we know to be basic foundational truths. So, without question, the principles in that book would be, universal for anyone, anywhere. And I think people could take that book and every chapter, as you know, is broken down very separately, but we are interconnected with all the stuff we talked about. So, that's just a book that we've just kind of poured our life into, and I think we'll probably have a second edition at some point as we learn more. But I kind of call that book our legacy book.
It's amazing. And talk to us about your framework.
Well, so we have like there's two different kind of frameworks. Let me give you kind of a 30,000 foot view. Is like there's when you look at the big picture, up here, there are things we have control over. There are four: nutrition, sleep, stress management, movement. And those are things that we should do. All human beings have the ability to manage and handle those things well. No excuses, right? But then you've got the areas from up here that you don't really understand. Genetics. Some people need hormones and don't know what to do. Peptides, understanding those is very unique. And then there's a lot of supplementation talk out there. Supplements is a tens of billions of dollar industry that has a lot of fraud and deception, waste, and truth in it. So, having said that, that's up here, and then we go down deeper into what we determine to be the cause, culprit, place of decay in life, which I think is the mitochondria. The mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cells. Without the power in the cells or the ATP production, the cells die and we die. And so from a granular standpoint, we built a framework to really capitalize on the mitochondria. So we dove down deeper and we talk about things, and that is understanding just the mitochondrial's function, how to protect it with peptides, some of the redox biology, that all free radicals are not bad, how to use molecular hydrogen, how to use some ketones. Oxygen, I know that's in your wheelhouse as well, to understand how this thing called the mitochondria becomes dysfunctional, because as we know, every disease process, everyone we have, has a core fundamental commonality, which is mitochondrial dysfunction, which leads to chronic systemic inflammation. So I think, looking at it from the top, bottom, and everything in between is kind of how we chose to do it. And in that book, it's got a lot of concepts and ideas that sort of float that 30,000 foot and tease on the granular level that people can put into practice.
That's amazing. And walk us through a process. If you had someone new coming into your practice, what are the sorts of things you look at, and what do you glean from each one of those?
Well, we're going to do blood work, number one, because I think blood work is key. And most blood work that is done today in the conventional system, Brad, is very elementary,
Yep.
and it will miss things.
Yep.
So it might be the standard of care, but the standard of care doesn't care
No.
about getting you out of the system. So we need to know that. So we do a deep dive, a very robust blood analysis with everyone, because what's passing through your bloodstream will tell you a story.
Yep.
The principle is the life is in the blood. So I want to know what's passing through the blood. And so we'll look at that. And then we also like to look at genetics. So I like to look at that as the downstream and upstream approach. Now, with genetics, I don't look at those, Brad, as something that's bad. I look at them as good. Genes have changed 2% in 10,000 years.
Yep.
2%, not 10%, 2%. That means that the genes are not the culprit or cause of disease processes.
Right.
If they were, we'd already figured that out. But there are areas of potential susceptibility in response to them being into and bathed in the standard American Western diet. So I want to know where those areas of susceptibility are so that I can utilize that knowledge to educate a person on what to do to avoid disease processes. So we have upstream, downstream approach. And then we want to also be able to test the aging of the system. So we're able to now test the biological immune system aging process by looking at what's called the glycans on top of your IgG molecule. A lot of people haven't heard of that test, but you can do that. And the IgG molecule is your most robust antibody. And because of that, these structures of glycans, which are little small sugars, we can look at that structure and we determine how is Brad immune system aging? How is Mark's immune system aging? And we can quantify that with a number. And to be bold with this, it's good for our patient base, our client base. It's not uncommon for them to be aging 20, 30, 40 years their junior with their immune system age. That's very common, which if your immune system responds as a warrior, if you will, to deal with what's trying to attack you and trying to kill it, that's a benefit. We're also able to, again, test the organ systems as well. So that's fascinating. You can test 21 organ systems, and on those we use a little bit of a unique process. Some of the methylation markers, what's happening real time in our metabolome. We're able to test, see how old we are in some organ systems. And so put those two numbers together with the upstream downstream approach with all the things that we do, and you can really create a unique, personalized, individualized plan for human beings to be able to put into place and begin to age more, I don't want to say backwards, but more conducive with what is the pace of our normal aging process. Normal aging process should be about the pace of about 120. I really believe that. But America's expectation is about 80. So I look at the expectation about two-thirds of what it should be. That does not guarantee we're going to live to 120. That's not the point. That's not what I'm saying.
Yep.
But we should live our life with the expectation to have a very lengthy health span and a very short sick span.
Yep. That should be the goal. You're right. I'm a big fan of that too. I don't like talking about length of life because I don't think someone who spent a decade sick, throwing it away in my 30s and 40s, length is irrelevant. It's the quality you have within those years, the connections you have, the positive experiences you have, feeling well in your body. So I love that. And you mentioned genetics, and I love what you said there. You talk about genetics isn't predestined. We always hear this. We always hear this out of folks like, hey, I've got bad genetics. I've got weak genetics. And I always think back, I'm like, you do realize the human species has been around hundreds of thousands of years, most likely, maybe more. And like, if our genetics was so faulty, would have we made it out of some of the challenging times early where we were out in the elements dealing with things that were hunting us down and everything else? Like, is that realistic, or is it that we're more resilient than we think? And there's this epigenetic component. And I think epigenetics is really empowering when people understand that. Can you explain that to the audience?
Yeah, you're right on point, Brad. The idea of the genetics being the ultimate in responsiveness to the world is the epitome of this ultra resilience that you just mentioned, right? There's no way we can even understand the complexities of the way our body responds. But our genes, as we know, sit on the 23 chromosomes of mom and dad, and they're wound together in that double helix structure in all of our cells inside the nucleus. They respond or unravel to make proteins in response to the environment. In the term epigenetics, you're talking about environment genetics. There's a conversation that goes. The conversation is the genes are seeing. We are seeing. We as the human are seeing and experiencing this thing called life in us and around us. So it's not just in us that's happening to create the genetic response. It's something that's outside. It's how we handle, how we perceive things, what we say, how we do, how we perceive a traffic jam, how we perceive life occurrences, what we put in our mouth, what we do with exercise or not. So all these things inside and outside create stimuli for the genes to respond. And the genes see something. For example, they see a virus that comes in you. They will go, uh-oh, and I'm being very lay term oriented here. They'll go, uh-oh, we have to roll something out to respond to this. And they roll out a protein called an antibody. So the genes roll out through epigenetic signaling proteins to respond to a virus. And then if they see that virus again or something similar, they have a memory. So our immune system is tied to the incredible genetic response. So we have a memory. I've seen that before. I know what to do. And out comes the genetic rollout of another protein. If you go exercise and you tear down muscle in a microscopic way like you're supposed to, the ability to recompensate and build up that muscle loss is done by epigenetic. The epi is going to be the exercise, the stimuli, and the genetic response is going to be creating proteins to rebuild tissue. If you get an injury of some sort, the same principles apply. So this goes on all the time, trillions and trillions of times per day. Every millisecond of the day, something's happening like that. So this conversation between the environment and our genetics has always been happening. That's how we exist. That's how we adapt. That's how we overcome. And that's the beauty of that. That is so amazing.
Yeah,
We don't have
miracle.
bad genes.
No.
We don't. We've got supernatural genes. And frankly, the bad gene excuse, the bad gene statement is a simple cop out.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think it's part of a deception. If you get told or I get told, well, it's got bad genes, it takes your ability or even your thought process that I can do anything about this away from you because you
Yeah.
just live by chance. And when you take somebody's hope away, you take their ability to have any option away, you
Yep.
crush their spirit, man. And you
Hmm.
talk about other genetic responses that occur from that.
Yep.
And back to the stress, I think people need to know how this works. If you have a epigenetic, response to this stressors going on all the time, as we talked about at the top of the broadcast, you're creating cortisol all the time. Your stress, according to what you're perceiving, according to what your body's doing, what your body's pharmacy is making, genetically speaking, is creating all kinds of cortisol for that stressor out there, that threat out there. So the threat out there becomes your primary focus. If
Yeah.
the threat out there is your primary focus, guess what gets left behind? Internally. You don't repair things properly. You don't fix things properly. You don't repair dysfunctional mitochondria, dysfunctional cells, dysfunctional tissues. You can't even fight a virus. Think about what I just said. We talked about this thing years ago. I mean, people know where I'm
Yep.
going with this. Isolation and fear created dysfunction of the immune system. And so it goes on and on. And so this epigenetic conversation that people need to get is so deep and multi-layered. The more you dig, the more you don't understand, but the more you're amazed and in awe of what it really means.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen research after research. State of mind is so important in healing and wellness. And to your point, like, it just, if you're not going to remodel the house in the middle of a hurricane, so if your body thinks there's a tiger coming after you, it's got no time to worry about what needs fixing inside. It's like all energy on getting away and getting to
Yep.
a place of safety. And so if you don't feel safe in your body, again, this mental health space, then your body doesn't have the energy to dedicate to healing and wellness. Now, talk to us a little bit. You mentioned that you feel all roads lead back to mitochondrial health. Talk to us a little bit about how you think about mitochondrial health and some of the tools you use to help folks address mitochondrial health.
So mitochondria, as stated, is a necessity for life. How's that all work? I don't claim to know. But I do know that we have to have ATP for the cells to operate. And ATP is created in what's called the Krebs cycle in the electron transport chain from a mitochondria. And it's really a combination of having nutrient availability combined with this thing called oxygen. So if we've got both, we can create energy. But what happens if we don't have both? What happens if we don't have good nutrition and we become nutrient deficient? We eat high calorie foods that have low nutrients, which is typical of the standard American Western diet because we drive our schools today are driven by foods that have high calories under the idea that we have to have calories.
Yep.
But we don't run on calories, we run on nutrients plus oxygen. That's the point. And so when I see mitochondria, I'm thinking, okay, first of all, I've got to have great nutrition. I've got to make sure that from an intracellular standpoint, which can be tested, I want to make sure I have all of my micronutrients there, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids that come from our macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fats. And then, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention gut function because you consume foods, proteins, carbs, and fats. You chew them up, they go down through the esophagus, stomach, and start this digestive process, break down with digestive, juices, acids, and enzymes. That is where the magic happens because at that moment in time, your body's going, I like you, I don't like you, you're good, you're bad, I'm going to keep you, I'm going to extract you. And so the separation takes place and the micronutrients are allowed out of our GI tract into our bloodstream to be transported down to and received and assimilated or joined into the process of our cells. So that's where all the framework happens. So if a person's nutrition is not right, they will become mitochondrial dysfunctional. There's no question about that.
Yep.
But when you start a human being on look at the mitochondria, again, nutrition's first, I want to look at it from several angles. First of all, I want to understand the term free radicals and what that means. Most people have no idea because they've been taught that the free radicals are all bad. They're not.
Right.
When you go exercise, you have normal signaling that says, I need to go create more energy. And it triggers to be, a little more complicated. PGC1 alpha, which triggers mitochondrial biogenesis to go produce more energy. In other words, the mitochondria will say, hey, Brad's exercising. I need a buddy here. I need to get somebody to join with me and fuse with me. So we're going to combine our mitochondrial resources to create more energy based upon the demand of the exercise. So free radicals are necessary for normal function.
Yep.
And even when we have tissues that are broken down, we have to have energy to begin the process of repair. So free radicals are not all bad.
No.
However, if we don't have enough nutrients and vitamins that act as cofactors, and if we have a lot of environmental stimuli, poor digestion, a lot of inflammation, a lot of toxins, we're going to get excessive free radicals. And the excessive free radicals will bleed over, and those are called peroxynitrite and hydroxyl radical. For those of you that are listening right now, look them up. And they all have, both of them have negative effects. Peroxynitrite, somewhat negative. Hydroxyl radical, apparently all negative.
Yeah.
And so when I see that, I'm thinking, how can I use something that will selectively minimize the peroxynitrite and the hydroxyl radical? That one thing that I use is called molecular hydrogen. Now, the body produces that in a good gut function. But again, back to that circular argument we talked about, we have poor gut function because of poor diet, et cetera, et cetera. So we have poor hydrogen creation in our gut. Therefore, we have hydrogen deficiency. Now we can actually use molecular hydrogen through consumption or inhalation, and that will selectively go into, because of its size, it won't stop at the barriers of the cell. It penetrates right through, and it will bind to the peroxynitrite and the hydroxyl radicals selectively. It won't touch the rest of them, and it will turn them into water.
Yep.
Now, translated, what did it just say? Something that will kill you, the excessive free radicals, are turned into something that's life, the water.
Yeah.
How cool is that? And you can do that every single solitary day. Every human being can do that, Brad, and there's no negative effects. As far as I know, you can't get too much. As far as I know, there's not a negative study out there anywhere saying that too much of molecular hydrogen in whatever form is bad. And so that's an opportunity for every single person listening. I'm of the belief system as of right now on this day of this podcast that every person on planet Earth should be consuming molecular hydrogen, whether consumption or inhalation. I will also use some mitochondrial peptides. I like SS31 for the membrane health. And I like MOTS for the mitochondrial biogenesis efficiency. I also love ketones. I think medical grade ketones, ketone esters are the ones that I prefer as opposed to ketone salts and the ketone 1,3-butadiol ones. I think that ketones are great because you're not eating as much. They provide intra-mitochondrial energy in the absence of glucose. And so when you do that and you go into more of an intermittent fasting mode, the more times you're not eating, your body can then repair. Your body can correct. Your body can fight. Your body can see dead mitochondria and fix them through the process of mitochondrial mitophagy. And so when that happens, you've got that. And then I also, when I'm looking at this whole process, I will sometimes use NAD. I like NAD a lot. NAD is not a peptide for people that think it is. It's not. It's a cofactor. It has no amino acid, but it's a little molecule that you can use because your body produces less, and it has a lot to do with your body's own redox or reduction of oxidation biology, which is fascinating. And then obviously, right up your alley, using oxygen is primo for the course because when people are operating in this high glucose environment, and it's a terrible environment to operate in, that's where cancers can occur. And I know you know that all too well. So I'm using all of those things and more. Sometimes I'll use glutathione as well, occasionally. It depends on what I see, it depends on what I'm looking at with the person. It depends on what the stimuli are as far as mold or toxic burden on the body. But those are some of the things we do.
So people come to you for longevity. Are they also coming to you with certain chronic health conditions?
Sometimes we get all kinds. We've kind of coined the term no one should become specialist in one thing. You should become specialist in all things. And I believe that's right. Because I think that we need to get in the place of clinicians or even laypersons out there. There's no proprietary information anymore out there. It's all available. So I think that's the beauty of it all. People bring stuff to my attention all the time, and I'm like, wow, thank you. And I've learned that I don't know everything. I think that requires maturity on the part
Yeah.
of a clinician to realize they don't need to know everything, and they need to have a relationship with their client, and their client's not stupid. It's a partnership, and so people come to us with stuff a lot. I had a lady last week that came in and she's living or had been living in a chronic mold infested environment. So we kind of have to attack that. I've had people come in with, certain heart conditions before, and hypertensive, of course, is very common for us. And many times people come to us with, suboptimal hormones and things of that nature as well. So we'll fix that.
And are there certain diseases or conditions you guys are seeing more and more as time goes on?
Yeah, I'm seeing more cancers. Yeah, I think cancers are becoming more and more common, and I hate to even speak that because but it is a truth. We're seeing statistically speaking, cancers are on the heels of heart disease, and I think, in my opinion, if the trend continues, Brad, in the next 10 years, the next decade, cancer will become the number one killer of all Americans, and that's. I hope we don't get there, but we're heading that way very, very quickly. We're seeing that a lot. We're also seeing a lot more of the metabolic syndrome, the insulin resistance scores going up. That is absolutely a pandemic right now. It really is. Fatty liver, again, goes right back to the same process I just highlighted, but those are the common things. A lot of autoimmunity, a lot of Alzheimer's dementia are coming about now, more of that stuff than I've ever seen before. So those are stuff that I see more and more and more, and I wish I didn't.
Yeah, and to your earlier point, underneath all of these disease states is this increased inflammation that's going on. So when you guys see folks coming in with an abundance of inflammation, what do you guys do for them?
Well, I'm going right back to the basics. I'm going to talk about what you put in your head, what you put in your heart, what you put in your mouth, and even what comes out of your mouth. And what I mean by that is when someone comes in and says, well, I'm a diabetic, therefore, I'm going to stop them right there and say, listen, I don't want to hear that anymore.
Right.
You need to rephrase this. Your phrase is going to be, I'm living a life conducive with healthy blood sugar, or I'm living a life conducive with healthy insulin. Because when we speak that stuff out there, it does change us on the cell level. People can think that's crazy, but it really, really does. If you say, I'm afraid of this, or I'm scared of this, those will become epigenetic stimuli once again. So we're back to that conversation. But we'll get their nutrition straight. We'll get them moving. We'll work on their stress management, the perceptions I just talked about, their sleep and their movement. I mean, those are the four things we're going to do. I think that if we don't deal with those foundational issues, Brad, and you can put peptide supplements, stuff on board all day long,
Yeah.
but can you override a bad diet, bad lifestyle? The answer is no, you can't. And I
No.
think people need to know that. I've said this before and I really believe it. You can't pray away, pill away, supplement away, or hormone away a bad diet. And we need to change that. God gave us a brain. He gave us common sense. He gave us food. He gave us provision. And we need to start utilizing all those things for the benefit of this thing we call the temple. What you put in this thing is what you get out. We talk about this all the time from business principles. I hear, these business coaches talk about, well, these are the things you got to do, or marketing coaches, these are the things you got to do. Well, newsflash, you can't have a business if you're dead, and there are no trailer hitches on the back of a hearse. So, this is a foundational thing. So I want to get people there. And then I ask them, secondly, so I'm talking foundation. And then long term, I make them state, what is your vision? What do you want your life to look like in 5 years? And I want to hear it. I want to hear them say it. And I want to put it on paper. I'm going to repeat it back to them over and over again. I want to have them tell me what that is, because when you have a vision, you start working backwards on how you're going to get there, one step at a time. So that's kind of how we put our plans together.
It's amazing. And if we have folks listening today, what would you say are the top 2 or 3 things they should be thinking about to improve their health and wellness?
This is great, guys. This is your freebie tips of the day. Please put this into practice. It may sound oversimplified, but it's actually the truth. One thing, if you can begin to avoid, you'll remember this, anything the United States government subsidizes and calls food, just don't eat it. Don't eat it. And they subsidize breads and grains, corn, soy, dairy, sugar. Just don't eat those things. And if you just do that, you're going to have a great life. That's number one tip. Along those lines, though, seriously, people are having a hard time making changes. A lot of those things have addictive components in them. Like
Yeah.
they'll drive dopamine. They do drive the opioid receptors quite a bit. So
Yep.
again, one meal a day.
Yep.
Yeah. One meal a day is smart. Just start with one meal and that first meal and make it a good one. Make that a good one. And then secondly, with exercise, move every day. Movement is life.
Yep.
Put on your tennis shoes. If you're not doing anything, don't say you're going to start exercising for an hour a day every day. Don't do that. Start with maybe walking to the mailbox 5 times and back. Walking around your block once. Maybe doing 100 minutes of walking per week. Small, bite-sized goals are going to be key. So we talked about just starting with that one meal, starting with a little movement. And the third thing is go to bed 30 minutes earlier. That's it. Real simple. And if you just do those things, Brad, those are 3 things that cost nothing.
Yep.
And they get you a heck of a return on investment. And when you can do those things, you're going to get improvement in your health. Is that all you need to do? No. But it's a really good start. And I think to start, like a baby has to learn to walk, and falls down a few times before they can learn to run and eventually drive a car.
Yeah.
I want people to drive a sports car. I really, really do. But before that, you got to learn to walk and stand up and learn how to get back up if you fall down. So if people start right there, I think they'll do quite well.
Timeless, right? It's the same things we would be talking about 10 and 15 years ago and even further back, which tells you something, doesn't it?
Yep.
Really is. Even when we had more crude research and more crude tools, we still had the same top 3 things, because at the end of the day, it's readily apparent when you look at the data, even coarsely, if you will. So I love that. So if people want to learn more about you, Mark, where can they find out more about you and the book?
Now, they can go right to our website at functionaldr.com. That's our main clinic website. They want to learn more about, my wife or myself. We have our own personal websites, which are kind of unique, that drmarksherwood.com and drmichellesherwood.com. But our hub website is functionaldr.com.
Amazing, and we'll put all this in the show notes. So, thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, man. It's an honor to be with you at 1,000 Roads. I look forward to doing it again, Brad, and I'm glad I know you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Bye.
Welcome.